The following interview segment was taken from Talking Wealth on flix.net. That's FLIXX.net. Talking Wealth is brought to you by Wealth Within and presented by Dale Gillham and Janine Cox. To watch a full episode, go to flix.net and click on Talking Wealth under the business and finance sections. Or for more information, visit wealthwithin.com.au. Now I'd like to introduce a new guest to our show, Eric Brotman. Now, Eric is a certified financial planner and CEO of BFG Financial Advisors with over 25 years of experience as a trusted advisor. Eric believes financial literacy is the key to well-being and is the author of multiple books on personal finance and the host of Don't Retire, Graduate podcast. Now, Eric's approachable and actionable financial advice has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes.com, Yahoo Finance, the Baltimore Sun and others. Now, Eric Brotman, welcome to Talking Wealth. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, look, you have a new book which has the same name as your podcast, as I just mentioned, Don't Retire, Graduate. Now, I know the title, when I first read it, it just really grabbed me. Can you tell me a little bit more about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. The book was published in October of 2020, and it's really about the idea that retirement in its traditional sense is absolutely awful for you and none of us should do it. And we spend so much time talking about retirement planning and people look at that as a financial thing. The problem is there's more to it than the math. So we believe, and I firmly believe, that retirement should be something you go towards instead of something you run from. It shouldn't be a disappearing act. It shouldn't be the end of anything as much as it's the beginning of the next phase of your life, which could be a third of your life and half of your adult life. So to me, it's a way to advance into the next phase of your life that may or may not require income. I mean, if you're financially independent, that's absolutely a great goal. Whether you're 45 or 85, financial independence is good. But you have to have a purpose. You have to have a reason to want to keep going, and it makes life worth living.
Yeah, look, I'm 100% behind that. People have been saying to me for years, why haven't you retired yet? And I go, because I just love what I do. Like, what would I do? All my friends work, and who am I going to play golf with and go to the beach and do stuff with? They're all working. And I briefly retired just before I was 40, and that sort of lasted about 3 or 4 months. And and now I keep thinking, when am I going to retire? And I'm thinking, do I really want to retire? So I really hear what you're saying. I only got your book, I think, yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to read through it. So I had a bit of a flick through it, and there were some really, really interesting chapters in that I really want to get into personally to have a good read of it. And I do like what I read and some of the philosophy. But one thing that really catch me is I briefly read that you believe financial well-being is a large component of our health as a whole, and should be tended to in the same way as exercise, clean eating and mental health. And that so resonated with me, because that's what I keep trying to talk to our clients, our students and people that I deal with. It's to me, health and wealth are the same thing. One has a W in front of it, basically, and they should be pretty much the same thing. But can you explore what you mean by all of that?
Well, it's been said that money's a lot like oxygen. When you have enough, you don't think about it, and when you don't have enough, it's all you think about. To me, people who aren't financially in good shape, whether it's financially literate or just in a good place financially, can't think about much else. It's pervasive, particularly if there are debt issues, if there are creditor issues. If you're worried about making your next rent payment or mortgage payment, you're not focused on your job, your family, your friends, your health. You're focused on nothing except how in the world am I going to stay? How am I going to keep the lights on? And so, and there's lots of stages of that. But at the end of the day, I think it's important, and it's important for business too. You want your employees to be financially well so that they're focusing on their job and not concerned about other things that take them away from that during the day. So I think from a business perspective, it makes sense. And from a personal perspective, health and wealth are inextricably linked.
Look, to me, what you're saying just resonates with me, because I often say to people, it's what you focus on most is what you get. but most people are focusing on not having enough money, and they're focusing on the debt. They're focusing on failure and not getting to retirement wealthy. And people often say to me, well, what happens if you lose all your money today? And I said, well, I'll get it back tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Because my mother taught me, broke is temporary, poor's a state of mind. And I find a lot of people have that sort of poor mentality where they're thinking, it's that scarcity, I don't have enough money to do this, I don't have enough money to do that. And I just changed the question and saying, well, how can I find the money to do this? And how can I find the money to do that? And setting my goals, and it just happens. So what you're saying really, as I said, is really what resonates to me. And I think, a lot of people do need to change some of that way they think and practice good wealth building habits, just as they do with exercise, as you mentioned. And obviously mental health and physical health go hand in hand. That's scientific fact. Now, I want to sort of really focus on in the last year, because obviously the last year has put a lot of pressure on so many people, not just in the US, but around the world with the COVID pandemic, with a lot of people suffering job losses last year, or they weren't able to work, but they still had a job. There were government handouts. There was, there's a lot more jobs were just vanished or vaporised. And I think the jobless rate in the US is still around about the 10% mark, which is still reasonably high, but not too bad. But in this year, during the pandemic, now I know many people are questioning a couple of things. First is their job security. How do I get job security today and into the future? Or maybe I should say income security, or how am I going to continue to generate an income for the rest of my life till I retire? And the second one is probably even more important, having been set back financially from the pandemic, whether it's losing your job, losing money in the market meltdown, whatever that is. How can people continue working towards retirement? Is there a strategy or a plan that they should have now? And is that different than what it was prior to COVID?
You ask a great question, and I think there's several answers based on where folks are in not only in their lives chronologically, but in their lives financially. You may have heard the term the K-shaped recovery.
No, I haven't,
The idea that
actually.
in lieu of a V-shaped recovery, which is typical when an economy gets clobbered and bounces back, often pretty fast, a K-shaped recovery, which to the best of my knowledge, I'd never heard of before. But what happens if you picture a K is you've got a piece of the population going straight up and a piece of the population going straight down.
Okay.
In general, people of wealth and of means thrived during this last year, in part because they couldn't spend money on the stuff they spend money on, whether it's leisure or honestly, people have said, I look at myself, I haven't been to a dry cleaner in a year.
Yep.
I don't wear a tie. You're wearing a tie. I don't wear a tie anymore. There's been, and that's a silly thing, but I used to spend 2 days a week on airplanes. I haven't been on a plane in a year.
Yep.
And so when I look at that, not only from a business standpoint, but from a household standpoint, spending less on dining out or going to the theater or a sports event or traveling, just going on vacations. If you skip that for a year, the scarcity becomes abundance pretty quickly if you still have your income. So the K-shaped recovery really for people who kept their income and for people who stayed healthy, of course, this actually became an accretive event. And these people are in better shape than they were before. On the other hand, the folks who either had a health crisis or a loss of a loved one, or who had a job crisis or an income crisis, they really lost a lot of ground. And I think what's happened in the last 12 months has exacerbated the gap between the haves and the have-nots in a way that has been very damaging to a middle class. And I suspect that's not true only in the US, but I know it's true here. Our unemployment rate is down. Actually, it's closer to 7 than 10. In fact, I think it's 6.6 officially, which is, I think, not bad. That's pretty resilient. We had the lowest unemployment in decades right before COVID.
Yes.
And the high unemployment really is still in leisure and hospitality. So it's hotels, it's dining institutions and things that I think there's an incredible pent-up demand. We are allegedly all going to be vaccinated by the end of May. I'll believe that when I see it.
Yep.
They didn't say which May. They just said May.
Just which year?
Yeah, right. May 2028. I don't know. So we allegedly, and I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand to do things that people have missed over the last year. I also think there are going to be things that have changed forever.
Correct.
And most of them are going to be good. So I don't want to belittle the loss of life. There's lots of families who have suffered unbelievably here, not just financially, but in all kinds of personal ways. But the way the world is going to change, I believe, as a result of this pandemic is overwhelmingly positive. I'll give you a few examples. Number one, it is now possible as a job seeker to work if you're in white collar, if you can work remotely, you can work from anywhere. So you no longer necessarily have to move to take a job. That means a lot of different things, but it means for folks in the States, it means if you have both spouses working and one spouse gets a job offer across the country, you may not have to pick which job to keep. You might be able to do both, and you might not have to move. You also don't have to live within a proximity of your office, which means you don't have to live in the city, which means you don't have to spend the money to do that. So personally, I think a lot of families are recognizing the suburbs are booming here. The real estate market is outrageous here in the suburbs. It's lousy in the cities because people suddenly space is a good idea. And I don't know that that's going away either, because living close to work won't matter for a third of the population.
Correct.
So that's a good thing. As a business owner, it also means you can hire talent without having to have a small radius to do it. You know, we now have employees in Texas and Utah, which are nowhere near Maryland. And it doesn't matter, you know, whether they were home and it was down the street or whether they're working from home and they're 3,000 miles away, it hasn't impacted productivity. It means businesses will need less office space. That saves money. That saves money on utilities. That means less people will be commuting, which is good for pollution. It's good for the waste of time in traffic. I mean, there's all of these things that are coming down the pike. The impact here, the biggest impact here, I think, is going to be on higher education. Because the idea of going to university and spending 4 years and getting a degree and being finished with your learning when you're liable to work for the next 50 or 60 years is foolish. You're not going to learn everything you need to know by 22 or 25 or whatever. But beyond that, I think the student loans that were taken are, I think that was a bill of goods. I think these young people are going to be paying for student loans for themselves while they're paying for their own children's education simultaneously. And I think the next generation's not going to do that. They're going to work full time and they're going to do education part time, or they're going to go back and forth, but almost like sabbaticals. You said you retired for 4 months. I think that's a sabbatical. You took a little time off. You rejuvenated yourself, and then you came back at it. And millennials figured out a bunch of things. We like to tease millennials. First of all, they're not children anymore. Some of them are turning 40.
Yes.
Which may still sound like children, but they're adult people. They figured out the side hustle. They figured out that the best job security you could have, or income security you could have, was also having some side income, so that if you lost your primary job, you weren't suddenly idle. That's a great thing. They figured out that they're all free agents and that they're not stuck working for the same company for 30 years and punching a clock they hate just so they can get the gold watch and the party and then go home and watch TV. What a tragic generation that was. So millennials figured it out, and Gen Z is going to master it.
I agree with that one.
I feel really good about the way that they're going to approach work. And it won't be rare for somebody 28 or 35 or 43 to take a year off and travel and do things that otherwise seemed impossible. Like, people didn't think they could take a 2-week vacation. And depending on the career you're in, it's now possible to do the sabbaticals very much like you did. And I think we'll see a lot more of that. I think work-life balance, this whole idea of work-life balance, we can throw directly in the garbage. It doesn't exist. Work-life integration does, though.
Yeah.
And you can integrate the two things and have, it's not a balance. You're not doing one or the other. It's not like today I'm going to work and tomorrow I'm not going to work. I think we've learned so much, and I'm so optimistic about where this is headed. So we have to get through the vaccinations, and hopefully they will work in the way they're intended and we can get back to some semblance of normal. But I don't think that normal is going to look like it did before. I think there is, and I hate the term new normal. We're also sick of hearing about the new normal. I'm sick of that. But there will certainly be some adjustments that are permanent. And most of them will be for efficiencies, productivity, for balance. I mean, if you had a 5-year-old and your 5-year-old ran across the stage right now, no one would bat an eye.
Correct.
Because that is 2021. That happens. We have lives. And we have families, and we have pets. How many cats or dogs have jumped in a Zoom call? And we're not taking ourselves so seriously. We're
Yes.
realizing, let's focus on what's important. And so those are great things.
Yeah. Oh, look, I have to agree with everything we just said. I mean, as you were talking, I'm thinking, yeah, that's exactly what's been going on with us. You know, we've made more money in the last 12 months than we've made in any other year in history. You know, we had our business, we moved out of offices and everything 4 years ago. I now employ staff all around Australia, which I wasn't able to do before. So all of those things we've been doing the last 4 years or more, all of those things that you're talking about, yeah, that's us, you know, or our business and what we're actually doing, because it does give a lot more. And I hate using the term work-life balance. As you said, it's more, because people say to me, what about work-life balance? And I go, that's a myth. How do you do that? Like, you can't really do it, because if you're focusing on one thing, something else has to suffer. So it's that constant shifting sand in the sandbox. But I really do agree with you. Those people who have got it, like you were saying, really will be that new shift in where we're going to as far as our work, our life, our family, our health. Everything is changing, and you know, we are seeing real estate across the US doing very, very well, as it is in Australia. And the real estate experts that I interview are saying exactly what you are. There's that spoken hub type of effect where, you know, you won't actually be living close to your office, because you'll only be going there 1 or 2 days a week. Or they might have satellite office, smaller ones, away from the main big office, and you might go to a smaller satellite office. So there's a whole changing shift. But probably just to help people, is there some sort of step-by-step guide to, you know, that you might be able to help people with working towards their retirement, even, you know, even while they're regaining sort of those losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Or is something you can help them with, a few steps that they can do right now?
Actually, that's why I wrote this book. I mean, Don't Retire, Graduate is 21 modules. Think of them like college courses. The book is written to be a college curriculum, but it is definitely not a textbook. It's a fun read. It's a relatively easy read. And we're publishing, literally this week, we're publishing a workbook that accompanies that, where it's 21 extra credit assignments, because nobody likes homework, 21 extra credit assignments that will allow people to sort of build their own financial path to financial independence. And you can start wherever you are. So if you're in your 20s and you're dealing with student loans, you're in a different place than if you're in your 40s and you've got 3 kids to educate and your parents are getting older. And if you're in your 70s, you're in a different place than they are. So you can really pick up wherever you need. You can pick and choose which courses. The book doesn't have to be linear. So as much as I think it's terrific to read it cover to cover, the reality is there might be 3 or 4 or 5 things in there that you really want to focus on, and you can go straight to them so that you don't have to feel like you've got this heavy lift. And so we're actually putting together an online course around this, because people like to learn about financial literacy. Without financial literacy, you can't make good decisions.
That's absolutely.
I mean, there's people, and there's a big percentage of people in this country anyway, who are what's affectionately referred to as unbanked. I mean, they don't even have a checking account. So when you start talking retirement security, for right now, it's you know, what happens if my house is robbed because I have cash in it? You know, like, there's such a spectrum of humanity. You know, wealthy people will generally find ways to stay wealthy. And I would say it is much easier to stay wealthy than to get there, just like it's easier to stay healthy than it is to get there. And that's why I think it's a lifelong thing. And so I wrote this book to do just that, whether it's creating good cash flow habits, or having the right risk management plan, or building the right portfolio, or starting to think about things that matter beyond your lifetime, that are more important than money. Your values, your visions, your stories, your history.
Yeah.
And there's more to it than just stuff.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I mean, you know, I'd be happy with just an old truck driving around. I mean, I do drive a nice car, because it's amazing people expect me to drive a really nice car rather than an old truck. But, you know, you are right. You know, the second million's easier to get than the first million, you know. So if you know how to make money, you know how to make money. And that's sort of where my comment earlier was, you know, if I lost it all today, I'd still get it back, because everything's in here. And that's that attitude towards money that you were sort of alluding to. If you have the right attitude to your life and money, then you'll always find a way to make more money. It's, you know, it's just how you do you, I suppose, is an easy way for me to say that. And I find a lot of people aren't financially literate, or they just put it in a too hard basket. It's like, oh, no, I know I need to save for my retirement, but it's, it's just easy to go and buy a new couch.
Which is good because you're going to live on it if you don't save for your retirement under a bridge on your new couch.
Yeah. So I absolutely 100% agree with you. I'm going to read your book. I really am going to read your book, as I only got it yesterday, and I've put it onto my iPad and I'm going to read it because there is some really good chapters in there. I thought, yeah, that sounds like a really great chapter. So I'm not a financial advisor. I started studying for it and I went, no, I want to do something else. But I do hold my own license, my SIC license and everything else as a fund manager. But some of the stuff that you talk about, I actually want to know myself because it might be able to help me even in Australia. So we have the same issues, whether you're in the US or whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Europe or whether you're in Asia, we all have the same issues. And I think books like yours need to be published and people do need to read them. So how can people find out about you and how to get your book?
The book's available on Amazon. It's available wherever books are sold online. You can also go to brotmanmedia.com and see all of not only the books that I've published, but also some white papers that are available, some ebooks that are free. So if you have viewers that want to get some additional information about how to pay less in income taxes or what the financial planning process really should be in a very objective way, there's some free resources there as well. So hopefully folks will check that out.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed chatting to you today, Eric Brotman. It's been fantastic. And I'd suggest people go and buy your book, Don't Retire, Graduate, and catch up with you on your podcast as well. I'm going to start listening to your podcast because I like the sound of your voice too. It's really smooth.
I appreciate that. It's all the equipment.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time today, and you take care.
It's been great. Thank you.
For more information on our guest in today's episode, visit the link on screen right now. For more Talking Wealth, visit flix.net and click on Talking Wealth under the Business and Finance section. That's flixx.net. Or visit wealthwithin.com.au, where we have hundreds of informational videos, live shows and Talking Wealth podcasts. Talking Wealth was voted number 3 in stock market podcasts globally in 2018 by FeedSpot. For more information on our courses, visit wealthwithin.com.au.